folding back like everything that's in this chapter, everything comes down to essentially that this was like a big reveal chapter, like in the grand scope of things. Like everything was some form of reveal in one way or the other. But with Yuta, I'm not that surprised Yuta was working an angle, because I didn't think that he was actually just like, oh, I'm pretending the whole time. I figured it was going to be more of like he didn't know the whole scope of things, and then it would be once a character like Maki ends up like running into him, she could just tell him the real scope of what just went down, and how like everything they're saying about Satoru and Yuji is like just a bunch of lies. Because Yuji, he would have no like outright reason to believe Yuji, whereas like Maki, I don't think that he would just like hear what Maki has to say and then not think it's serious and not think like she's telling the truth, because obviously like he was friends with that whole group. So it was like in my mind until they meet up that he was going to be like this. But it's like, okay, no, Satoru went and saw him at one point and told him to keep an eye on Yuji, which again is also very, very understandable. Like again, like Satoru knew that something was up. Him going to Yuta and saying like, hey, I need you to do me a favor in case something happens to me, makes a lot of sense. And again, he knows Satoru. Like Satoru is like, he's like a weird dude, like if you were to actually like meet him and be around him. But at the end of the day, he is somewhat of like a good person. Like he's like a bit of a troll, and he can be like hostile towards certain people, but he isn't. He has like almost like the super villain vibe in some aspects, but he isn't like the bad guy. Like he has kind of like a Kisuke Urahara vibe to him, but obviously not necessarily being the same character. It's just more of like he feels like he could be. He has like the little bit of that like malefic vibe, but you know that he has like a larger scale good intentions sort of in his head. But with Yuta meeting back up, he just noticed Chozo. And what happens to Chozo? I actually am like rethinking on the chapter, and I don't remember Chozo being anywhere in like the extra portion. So I'm wondering like where he went and like what did he do in like the end areas of the chapter? Did he get away? Is he gonna get killed by Nalia? What exactly is gonna happen? But he's like saying how like, oh, I can heal you now, because now he's got poison from Chozo's attacks. They are poisonous and stuff, cursed blood. And he's able to be like, okay, I'll heal you, but in return you gotta tell people about Yuji's death. So he's swapping favors for favors. And you have this flashback. Now I thought it was gonna be one of Yuji's weird like inserting memories that never happened into somebody's head, because the guy who I'm pretty sure is actually his dad ends up kind of looks like Nalia a little bit. Like if you look at the face, they're different, but it's a similar hair, somewhat of a little bit of a not a similar face, but kind of like somewhat of a similar kind of, I think, facial structure, because he's got Yuji's face, but I think it's just kind of that sharp chin and then the hairstyle that makes him look a little bit like it. But I'm guessing these are Yuji's parents, and at the end of it, right before he ends up waking up, he sees who I'd assume is his mom. But he's talking to him, and he's like, oh, don't talk about such things in front of Yuji. They say babies remember things more than they speak, because they're just kind of conversing about like, oh no, give up on that woman or you'll die. He's like, I know you wanted a child, but it didn't happen. But that didn't happen with Kaori. Her death was, and then you have father-in-law, you have this person show up, and that's, I would assume, Yuji's mom. And, this other dude was, his dad, and, some form of mysterious thing going on between them. Because it's like, is this woman actually, the same chick, or is there some form of weird modifications or mystery to him? I mean, you see the head scars, and obviously that tells you something with Kamo Noritoshi. My personal guess is, like, Yuji is some form of experimented person that Kamo, like, maybe Kamo had him engineered almost, either genetically of like picking the right candidates, or he was modified to be like the perfect vessel for Sukuna. Maybe he's been planning this out way longer than people give him credit for, and to a larger scope. If he's just, I need to get somebody created to hold Sukuna so somebody can keep him in check, and then for whatever his plans and moving forward about letting all these cursed spirits out and kind of like reshaping the world. But then Yuta, like, once Yuji wakes up, he has, like, a funny moment. He has, like, a smile on his face. He's like, oh, what a relief. He went from depressed to somewhat funny in like a short span of time, and then explaining everything going on with like how Satoru explained to him what was going on, asked him to do a favor and whatnot. And then, happy enough for me, in the week of Megumi getting his domain expansion episode, he ends up returning to the manga, which again, I'm very pleased about. I've expressed before, Megumi is my favorite character so far within the series. Like, Nanami was for a bit, but the unfortunates of what happened to Nami, but plus the big plus-ups for Megumi during the whole Shibuya arc was great. But he's now back in the fray of things. I'm wondering where Kugisaki is, and if she's going to end up, joining this as well. If she's going to end up being in, like participating in the arc as this early. Like, I assume she's going to come back eventually, but it's like, is she still recovering? Where is she at right now? Just in general, like, what is her next step within like the whole setup thing? Because a lot of people are wondering if she's dead. I don't think so. I don't think she's dead, but there's like until she comes back, there's always that possibility of like, is Akutami gonna kill her off? Like, she was hurt, she was put in like that ambiguous, could be either kind of scenario. The healer guy was like, I can save her, but there's no guarantee, and like we haven't heard anything about her since. So she's definitely in like a unfortunate limbo status of like when we're gonna actually see her come back. But Megumi is talking to Yuji and trying to kind of like get him back on place. Like, Megumi is like explaining him, because Yuji's upset over like the people that they lost and stuff during the whole Shibuya arc, just like losing civilians and whatnot, and like in general, and like anybody that died across the board. He's like, we're not heroes. We're not superheroes. We can't save everybody. We can't do everything. We can't prevent every death. We can't just be there for everybody at all points in the day. Our job is our job. Like, they are, at the end of the day, supposed to deal with the cursed spirits. And I think with them, it's more of like the bigger picture of like, there's always going to be unfortunate casualties and like crazy events and stuff. You're always going to, like, with the cursed spirit on the loose, like, you have to, there has to be like detective work for a lot of them, just for them to locate them, to catch them, to just kind of like get into the case already. We've seen it's not like the same as like with My Hero, I mean, like, because that is like a superhero series. Like, when a villain's up to no good, like out in the middle of nowhere, like, there's always gonna be characters that, are doing stuff in the shadows and stuff, but there's always also gonna be bad guys that are just out in the open. They're just robbing banks and causing very out in the middle of the open mischief. Whereas it doesn't seem like any of the cursed spirits are like that. Like, they don't really have the same level of, like grand want for of like display. For the most part, like, any of the curses that are lower level seem like they're way more mischievous. They're trying to be tricky and not be found. Whereas, like, any of the higher up ones are more smart, tactical. So, like, they've got, like, their own schemes and strategies, like, a mix of things. So, you're not able to save everybody. Like, when you think about, like, the whole setup of that, when you have, like, the majority of curses are going to be, again, being quiet, being sneaky, being mischievous and stuff. Like, it has to be, like, characters have to find, like, the, clues to whatever the case is, and then have to do the work of locating them. And who knows by that point of like how many bodies like this curse has already had and stuff. So it's one of those things that come with the job that be really, it'd be unfortunate, because you're going to end up seeing people die and stuff, but it's just in the territory. And if somebody's not up to deal with that, then eventually they're going to get overwhelmed and the curses are just going to be too much. But Megumi's just getting him back in, getting Yuji's head back into the right place, trying to get him around there and really accept that it's gonna happen. The best course of action is really just doing what you can to save everybody that you possibly can in this scenario. Even like a few people is still better than them not living. And at the end of the chapter, like, he mentions that Kamo Noritoshi is like setting up for a culling game. And there's a bunch of people ensnared by it. And who I believe is his sister near that end of the panel with, like, the bandaging on his head. I had to go back and look at his sister, but I'm pretty sure that's her. Like, she's got this wrapping of these bandages over where her, where that seal would be that was, like, holding her in place. And then I'm guessing Naoya near, like, right before then, and getting that walking away all bloody. They said the culling game, it's like, after awakening a cursed techniques, the players must declare the participation in the culling game at a barrier of their choice within 19 days. Very strange. Any player who breaks the previous rule shall be subject to cursed technique removal. So what are they just going to have, like, a kind of, like, whittling down of, like, the better better minions, essentially, for, like, Kamo's game. Players score points by ending the lives of other players. Points are determined by the game master and indicate the value of the player's life. General rule, sorcerers are worth 5 points, non-sorcerers are worth 1 point. Excluding the point value of a player's own life, players may expend 100 points to negotiate with the game master to add a new rule to the culling game. In accordance to previous rules, the game master must accept the proposed new rule unless it is marked long-lasting effect on the culling game. If the player's score remains the same for 19 days, the player shall be subject to curse removal technique. So, a little weird to think about it, just like, is he going to, like, what is his overall plan here? Like, what is his large-scale kind of setup? I'd have to go back and look. I don't think a culling game has been mentioned at any point earlier in the story. Like, maybe it's one of those things that, like, they know about, they just haven't explored yet fully, and we're going to get that next chapter. But anyway, other than that, comment below. Tell me your thoughts are about this chapter, and, like, how you think the switch to Yuta is really going to play out, and how this next portion of this culling game is really going to play out. But anyway, other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, from the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. But other than that, I appreciate everybody who's already subscribed. I thank you all for listening. Bye.